Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. We are excited and pleased to be able to unveil the AFCARS 2023 data, along with a new format in which we will be displaying these data. I don't know that we're going to take the full hour, but we are going to do a fairly comprehensive overview of the dashboard itself. Before we do that, I'd like to turn it over to Acting Assistant Secretary Andrew Graddison for some opening remarks. Acting Assistant Secretary Graddison, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast, and good morning to you, to everyone else in the world. My name is Andrew Graddison, and I am the Acting Assistant Secretary at the Administration for Children and Families here at the United States Department of Health and Human Services. I'm excited to be with you all today, and I'm thrilled to have a part in sharing the great work that the Children's Bureau team has done to compile this new resource. As you all likely know, I'm relatively new to ACF, having joined earlier this year. And over the past few weeks, I've been meeting with more stakeholders to outline my vision for ACF, my vision for child welfare. The core values and mission that I have for ACF revolve around two truths, and that's that the best economic program is a job and the best social program is a family. It's important to note that when I talk about families, especially when I'm talking about the child welfare system, I'm including more than just the nuclear family here. I'm talking about networks of people who are there to support one another. At the Children's Bureau, we aim to improve safety, permanency, and well-being of children. And we want to make sure that the adults, parents, and parental figures in a child's life protect their health, safety, and nourish their well-being. One of the strategies we will use at ACF to accomplish our vision is transparency, particularly when it comes to data and information that we collect. Today's announcement and this new dashboard demonstrate ACF's commitment to radical transparency and providing excellent customer service to our grant recipients and to the American public. That is why I'm so excited to be launching the new AFCARS data in a new format that expands the amount of information we are making available to the American public. On the data itself, we continue to see a decline in children entering foster care, and we will celebrate reduced numbers of children in foster care only when we see corresponding indicators of improved child safety. The only true measure of success will be fewer children harmed by abuse and neglect. Over the next 30 or 40 minutes, you'll see how you can access foster care data in a new, user-friendly way. This webinar is one of many opportunities we will have to continue to build knowledge around these data and stimulate conversations that will inform how ACF can better support children and families. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all that you do on behalf of children and families across this country. With that, I will turn it back over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary Graddison, and thank you all for joining. I know it's been a long time coming. This unveiling of the AFCARS dashboard is the consequence of our investing a lot of time and energy, along with the jurisdictions who contribute to the AFCARS report, in adjusting to the changes that were introduced in 2020. As many of you know, when the new AFCARS rule was finalized in 2020, we substantially changed the structure of the file, the breadth of the elements that we are collecting, and the mechanism for collecting that data. All of those changes required substantial effort on the part of the 4 agencies submitting the required data, and effort for our team to transform it into information from which we could extract some knowledge and make meaning of the new and expanded data collection. The return for that investment is this dynamic, interactive dashboard that makes as much use of the new data that we could make. And Roger's going to spend some time reviewing that with you. We did, as I say, not only change the structure so that we're collecting information that allows us to look more longitudinally at the experience of children who are served by the child welfare system. We expanded the elements about that we can report on. You will see that in this new dashboard. We are thrilled to have this dynamic interface because and to be able to expand our use of the information for many reasons, not the least of which is this project of building knowledge about the communities and the systems and the children and the outcomes that are served by those communities and systems, but also to respect the effort that jurisdictions for agencies made to comply with the new requirements on this expanded AFCARS report. But we unveil it with some caution. Once launched, we expect to continue to update it on a regular basis and to engage in a conversation with the community that involves its continual improvement. You will see when Roger reviews the information that we're presenting that the dashboard has a lot of opportunities for interaction. There are notes that explain some of the ways we've transformed the data. And we're asking you to pay close attention to those notes because the trade-off for expanding our method for sharing this information is to work with the user as they access it so that they are making the most accurate meaning of the information presented. As I said, once we've launched the data, we expect to continue to update it. And we will also continually work with jurisdictions to improve the quality of the information we're getting and the quality of our effort to transform it into knowledge that will help us have a continued conversation with you about the child welfare dynamics that we're reporting based on the information you're submitting to us. We are going to spend most of this session providing an overview of the dashboard. We're not taking questions today, but we will have the opportunity to answer your questions through inquiry going forward. And as I said, I think this is the first. I'm looking forward to this being the first of many conversations we have with the community about the information that we're pledging to make available to you as, among many things, acknowledgement of the effort it takes for jurisdictions to submit this data to us on a regular basis. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Roger, and we look forward to showing the AFCARS 2023 data in this new dashboard format.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm Roger Stanton, and I am a member of the Children's Bureau Data Analytics and Reporting team. Before I show the dashboard, I just want to give a little preview of what I'm going to describe. And to start off with, my demonstration of the dashboard will be less about the functionality of the dashboard, more about understanding the data that are presented there and the data limitations. We really are showing more information than we have previously. So as part of that sort of quick review of, right, so this is the first public sort of unveiling of what we refer to as the AFCARS 2020 data, which were first submitted by states for federal fiscal year 2023. And that's what we'll be showing, are the data for federal fiscal year 2023. But the new AFCARS data, as Jennifer mentioned, have many new data elements and a new reporting structure. And along with that comes some challenges. States have worked very hard to produce quality data and have submitted those data and continue to refine their reporting on that. And so the data continues to improve, but it also, this new structure enables us to present information that we weren't able to before. So it is truly longitudinal now, right? So for example, we previously would only find out about a living arrangement a child was in at the end of a reporting period. And now we get all living arrangements that a child experiences throughout their stay in foster care. And I'll describe those and show those in the dashboard, but that's just sort of what you think about, that these data really are different than they had been before. And so we are going to display more information also than we have previously. We cross-tabulate some of this information by demographics. That's not something we did before. We're able to show a more longitudinal perspective. And I mentioned that states are still refining their submissions, and we do expect, as the states resubmit, for the values to change. But all this is to say that showing this greater information does sort of require a greater responsibility on the user to pay attention to what the data are and what they represent. And that is really what I want my primary focus will be for in demonstrating the dashboard, is to talk about what is represented by these data and to sort of point you in directions of conclusions you maybe can and cannot draw from them. So with that, I will pull up the dashboard. Okay, so this is the AFCARS dashboard. This is the what we refer to as just the main page for the dashboard. At the end of this presentation, I will provide you in the chat with a link to the dashboard. Okay, I'll provide you with a link to the dashboard, and I will also point you to where on the Children's Bureau webpage this dashboard will go live sometime later today or tomorrow, and it is going to be publicly available. With that said, this is the dashboard. One of the main things I want to focus on are every page for the dashboard will have this sort of information page, and that gives you information about the underlying data in the dashboard. So here describe what the data are, some background on AFCARS 2020, and some information on the data limitations. And as we've mentioned, right, states are still building their capacity for this reporting structure and are continuing to refine their submissions. And there's just some places where you should observe some caution, and that this sort of describes that. So for example, if you see a state has typically reported 1,000 children in a certain category, and then you see a much smaller number, you should use caution, just assume that that is probably an area where that state might be updating their performance. But for the most part, you'll see that the data are quite accurate and sufficient. So I want to go back to here. So a few other things about the data, what we are displaying here, and I will throughout here, we just use what we refer to as a state filter, but it is we're currently displaying the 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico. At this time, we don't have data for tribes or other jurisdictions. Those may be added at a later date, but for right now, that is what we have. And what I'm displaying today is for fiscal year 2023. But as I mentioned, right, the states have done a lot of work to resubmit data. We have spent some time allowing those resubmissions to come in to improve the quality of the data. And then we took a lot of time ourselves to develop some analytic methods. As part of that, I just wanted to mention the incredible team effort that went into developing this. So the entire data team was involved in throughout aspects of this development and giving feedback. But I want to specifically acknowledge the help I received from Sarah Cernacker, who helped me with developing the analytic methods for tying the data tables together and generating the analyses, and Liz Sherry, who took the lead on developing the displays in the dashboard. So the dashboard this is, I said, the main page. It is based really around 3 primary populations. Those are described here. This describes the populations. There's also, again, this sort of general warning about that the data should be reviewed and considered that they are sort of temporary. They're being updated. These are preliminary numbers. They will be updated as states resubmit. So, but it's based on 3 populations: entries, children who have entered foster care in fiscal year 2023, children in foster care on September 30th, the last day of the federal fiscal year, and children who exited foster care during federal fiscal year 2023. And then you'll see that there are 5 bars here representing 5 federal fiscal years, and 2023 is in blue. That is not just because it's the most recent. That is because we're trying to sort of denote that the reporting population changed when AFCARS 2020 final rule was developed, and that it is not really an apples to apples comparison. You compare from 2023 to prior years that were based on AFCARS 1993 data. So that blue is sort of to signify that this is a difference here, and sort of caution when comparing across those previous years because the reporting did change. So we have those 3 populations. Each of those is a dashboard in its own, and I will describe them. But I also just want to describe, we also have these additional foster care subpopulations, so children served, children with a permanency plan for adoption on September 30, and children legally free on September 30. and children exiting to adoption. So I just want to take a moment here on the permanency plan and legally free. So legally free is a term that we use to describe children who, for their parents, have had their parental rights terminated. So if a child is, quote, legally free when all of their parents have had their parental rights terminated. And we also report children with a permanency plan for adoption. This is another important difference from what we used to report. We used to release the AFCARS report every year. That report described children who were what we defined called waiting for adoption, which was a combination of a plan for adoption and legal free status. And we have separated those out as two distinct populations here. There is certainly some overlap in them. And then their counts for these children and aspects, characteristics of them appear in different dashboards, and I'll describe that. But that is the start of how this information is different from what we used to show in the AFCARS report. These populations are relatively the same. One initial difference, and one of the real sort of advantages of this dashboard is now it is interactive, right? So we used to have a single report for the nation and a bunch of reports for every state and DC and Puerto Rico. But now we can just go through, filter by state, get the numbers for each state, and that's one quick way to get a preliminary glimpse of the foster care population in a state and how it's changed over time. So that's the main page for that. And then I want to describe the entries dashboard. Each dashboard, each of the three dashboards, so the entries, children in foster care on September 30, and the exits, are all set up fairly similarly. So I'll spend most of my time describing the entries, and what I say there basically applies to the others. And then I'll just describe a few nuances of those two dashboards. Okay, this is the entries dashboard, and each dashboard starts with this overview page. So we have the count of children who entered foster care. Up here we see 175,000. That's the national count. It is currently sorted by state, can also be sorted by count. And in addition to seeing the entries by count, you can see them by entry rate, where this is the rate of entry based on the underlying child population in the state. And again, it can be sorted by rate. And then there is a full table to get the table view of each of those. Also, I neglected to mention, we are missing data for 2 states that did not submit AFCARS 2023 data. So that, I'm sorry, fiscal year 2023 data. So that is another caveat to consider when you look at these counts. They are the counts for the nation minus the 2 states that didn't report for fiscal year 2023. Okay, so next is the demographics. So every population has a demographics page. And it shows age and race, ethnicity. And for here, you can, so we have the age, we have age by age groups. I'll also note that we are showing age up to 24 years. And then we've grouped them into these distinct categories. You can also click on an age, and that will change the race ethnicities, and vice versa. And then one other thing I wanted to mention, some of you may be aware of Statistical Policy Decision 15 from the US Census, which provides new guidance on how to collect and display race or ethnicity data. And we have developed another view of race that is more consistent with that upcoming change to the display. But again, this is an important area where this is described in this information, right? This describes the mutually exclusive categories or race alone. And so I really encourage you with every display you look at that you look at this information. And then these are cross-tabulated at the bottom, age by race ethnicity. And this cross-tabulation is something we do on every tab. And that is another aspect that is sort of new and interesting about this dashboard, as opposed to previously you could only see race, or you could see age, but you couldn't see a cross-tabulation. And that will apply to all the other tabs that we look at. All right, so next I'll describe the circumstances at removal. So these are the counts for the circumstances at the child removal when they entered foster care. And the way that these data are collected in AFCARS 2020 is that at removal, a child could be removed with multiple circumstances. And so because of that, right, each child could have potentially multiple circumstances. So we have more count, the count of circumstances is higher than the total number of children. And I want to just describe some information in this table. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see more closely. Another thing that we've done, so there are roughly 30 circumstances collected in AFCARS that are displayed here. And that's just sort of too many to show on a page. So we decided on a categorization scheme where we can categorize these to sort of simplify the display. And that is what you see here with this child abuse and neglect. So this, what we see is 142,000 children who came in with a circumstance that we classified as child abuse and neglect. That accounts for 82% of the children. So percentages throughout all of these are always based on the child count as a denominator. So there's 175,000 children, 142,000 of them had a circumstance of child abuse and neglect. So that's 82%. Now we can expand that and see the individual claims. Right, so we can see that 95,000 children, or 55% of the 175,000, entered care with a circumstance of neglect. Again, they can have multiple circumstances, so some of those children entered care with neglect and another circumstance, or maybe several other circumstances. But this allows you to see broadly what the circumstances are based on the categorization, and individually what each circumstance accounts for. And again, these are up here cross-tabulated by age and by race, so giving more information than we've ever showed about the circumstances with which children enter care.
Do you want to say a little about the mask?
Oh, yes, thank you. I meant to show that elsewhere. So sometimes you'll see mass data. That's probably most noticeable if I choose a state. Anywhere where you see the dashes, that is where we are suppressing data because the count is below 10. So we use suppression at the cell level and we use secondary suppression so that if a total is given and only one cell is missing, then we suppress additional data so the totals cannot be determined. So anywhere that you see those dashes like that, that means that number is suppressed. The count is below 10. So here, for example, American Indian Alaska Native children who entered with neglect, there's less than 10 of them. If there's not a dash and there's nothing there, that's a true 0. So that means there were no instances of physical abuse for that group. Thank you. Okay, next we'll talk about the permanency plan. This is, again, a very new way to think about the foster care data we have in AFCARS and how we're displaying it. Previously, we only received permanency plans for children at the end of the reporting period. And so that we couldn't report on their entry permanency plan. So this is the permanency plan after entry to foster care. So when states report these data, they report the plan type and the date that the plan was active. So this is the first plan on or after the removal date to foster care. So this is the first plan that the child was given when they entered foster care. This is for, go back to the nation, we're seeing just for the state of Alabama. So here they are nationally. We have permanency plans by age, by race or ethnicity, and you get the totals here also. This is also an area where we expect some refinement as states continue to improve their submissions. So one thing that I'll just note is that here, 20% of children don't have a permanency established at entry. That sort of makes sense upon entry. But as we look at later snapshots of the end of the federal fiscal year, that number hasn't quite dropped to what we expect it to. And we assume that as states improve their or continue to refine their submissions, those numbers will come down a little bit. And so another interesting set of information we were not able to previously describe, and this is something that we're able to describe given the new structure of the AFCARS 2020 data, is the living arrangement at entry foster care. So this is the first living arrangement the child was in when they entered foster care. but the way the AFCARS 2020 data are defined, a single living arrangement could have multiple characteristics. So for example, a living arrangement could be a non-relative, but could also be therapeutic. So that gives a lot of possibilities, and it makes for sort of, we wanted to just provide a simple display that would allow you to kind of easily see that information. So this is another time where I really want to highlight this information page. This describes the prioritization scheme that we developed. So we developed a prioritization scheme. So for example, if a child's living arrangement was described as relative or kin and therapeutic, we are counting it here as just relative or kin, not as therapeutic. So this describes the sort of the ranking system that we use by where we would count a living arrangement for a child. So that does mean that these living arrangements as counted here are mutually exclusive. So the sum of all these living arrangements adds up to the sum of the total entries.
You want to say a little about the expansion?
Yeah, I'm going to describe it. So, oops. Another component of how the AFCARS 2020 data are collected, a child could be in a relative or a non-relative living arrangement, and then that living arrangement could be shelter care, therapeutic, et cetera. There's a separate category called other, and those are a set of living arrangements that are mutually exclusive. So these ones like institution, juvenile justice, that is not part of our prioritization scheme, because if a child is in a juvenile justice living arrangement, that is the only description of that living arrangement. So for the ones with the prioritization scheme, in addition to what we've labeled it here, it can also be licensed or unlicensed. So for example, if we look at relative or kin, we see 74,000 children's first living arrangement was relative or kin. That's 42% of children. And then if we look at license and license, we get the actual individual counts for license. So of all entries, 28,000 were in a licensed relative or kin home. That's 16% of the living arrangements. So it gives you that ability to see that nuanced data. So again, like I've said before, this is a lot more information than we've ever shown. Right? We are now able to show living arrangements and permanency plans throughout the time course. And we're able to show nuanced information about those, cross-tabulated by demographics. So there is a lot more information here than there was previously. Okay, that is the entries overall. And now I just want to describe some of the caveats about, or sort of the details about the other two dashboards. So they're all accessed from that main page. This is the dashboard for children in foster care on the last day of the federal fiscal year. Right. Again, right now we just have 2023 data, and in this federal fiscal year filter, all you see is 2023. We are releasing the 2024 data fairly soon. Not sure exactly when, but I think our current estimate is that we would have the 2024 data available in this dashboard in roughly maybe July or August. So that is coming up. But the real reason I wanted to show you this is this is where information on children who are legally free or have a permanency plan for adoption are, right? So in previous reports, when we released the AFCARS report, there was a separate population of adoption, and it was characteristics about kids who may be waiting for adoption or who are adopted. We've here put these characteristics, children who are legally free, children who have a permanency plan for adoption. We've put those characteristics in the population they belong to, because these are characteristics that apply to them on the last day of the federal fiscal year. So if you want to see how many children were legally free on the last day of the federal fiscal year, you can click the legally free tab, and that gives you the counts by state. Then the count of children who have a permanency plan for adoption by state. And then likewise, like the other dashboards, we can go into the demographics, and we can get the counts of children who are legally free, see their ages, race, ethnicity. Same thing for permanency plans. You can then see these in the other tabs, right? So No surprise, the kids with permanency plans for adoption have a permanency plan for adoption. But we can then also look at legally free children and see, right? And we see that of the children who are legally free, 75% have a permanency plan for adoption. Some do not, right? Some have a planned permanency living arrangement. That's also an interesting one because we see that the likelihood of a planned permanent living arrangement, so essentially a child aging out of foster care, increases as a child gets older. Right, this is another sort of information that we just couldn't sort of see before because we didn't cross-tabulate this by age. And then we can go back and just see all children. And then you can see the living arrangements. See, right, with the permanency plan for adoption, you see that of the children with the permanency plan for adoption, 10% of them are currently in a pre-adoptive living arrangement on September 30th. So this gives a lot more information about the plans and about the characteristics of those specific children who are legally free or have a permanency plan for adoption. And then also there's the exits dashboard. Again, very similar to the others, but this is where we describe children who are adopted. And I also want to make a special note here. Again, in a change from what we used to report in the AFCARS, we reported adoptions, which were mostly adoptions from foster care, but included private adoptions that were funded with public agency funding, Title IV funding. Now we count adoptions only as adoptions from foster care. And so that's what these counts are. The counts on the main page also are that. So right, these counts for adoptions in 2022, et cetera. These were previously reported in the AFCARS report where it would have included private adoptions. And now we have only the public adoptions. I'm sorry, only the foster care adoptions. So we can see adoptions by state. We can sort them by state. And then likewise, we can see the demographic characteristics for children who are adopted in 2023 versus all children who exited in 2023. We have the exit reason for the exits for all children who exited. Certainly if you select adoption, then all you see are the adoptions. But here we can see all the exits. And then we also have time and care. I just want to make a special note about this. This is also noted here in this information page. I haven't shown the information page on every single tab, but every tab has one. And it always has helpful information about how to interpret the data you're looking at. Here, just to sort of note that this shouldn't be thought of as anything other than the time spent in care for children who did exit. So specifically, it's not a good way to make an inferential estimate about how long will children who enter care, how long will they spend in care? Because this is only children who exit. This doesn't describe children who did not exit. And that is certainly a component of how long children spend in care are those who don't exit. So that is a certain characteristic. Also, these ages are the ages at which they exited, not the age at which they entered. So that's just a note about this is useful just for understanding just what are the time spent to care for those children who did exit in this specific year. Okay, and that is the exits dashboard. Like I said, everything is here in this main dashboard. So now, give me a second, I will provide the link to the dashboard. That's the public link to the dashboard. It is live, you can use it. It will, as I mentioned, sometime later today, be posted to the Children's Bureau's website portion that has the data analytics and reporting team information. So that is the website where this will be posted later today or tomorrow. And with that, I will turn it back over to Jennifer to close us out.
Thanks, Roger. I just want to note a couple of things. One, also, will there be a PDF also available?
Yes, thank you. The website, when it gets updated with the dashboard, there will be a PDF print version that doesn't really look like the dashboard, but has a lot of the same information. It doesn't have the interactive components of it, obviously, and it's just the national data, but there is a print version that has the national data.
So there's that. For those of you who are used to a printable, downloadable file, that will be available. Roger's going to post in the chat the email address that you can direct inquiries to. As you know, we're not taking questions on this webinar, but we do look forward to hearing from you and to answering any questions that come our way. We've also taped the webinars, you know, and we expect to be able to post the webinar itself to the website. In the meantime, we do encourage you to check out the dashboard, to explore what it has to say, to be in touch with us where you see opportunities for improvement. As we have both said, and as the Assistant Secretary himself said, we are looking to engage with the public on the information we ask you to present to us, and to continue to both build knowledge and improve its quality by continuing this conversation. Thanks very much for coming today. Thanks again to the data team and to Roger and his leadership for producing this dashboard. We are going to be updating it on a regular basis, and we look forward to hearing from you about your experience working with these data. Thanks very much, and have a great day.
Thank you.